Hey there. So I have this custom audio amplifiers OD100 Classic Plus up on the workbench today. I've had this amp for quite some time. 2018 is when I got this used, and the problem I've been facing is volume drops. And what I had done as part of troubleshooting was to really replace each of the preamp tubes one by one and tested it. That was not the problem. Bypassed the FX loop, didn't help. And when I hooked it, when I hooked the guitar into the return of the FX loop is when I realized that it was basically the power section which was acting up. And as I'll just quickly show you that one of the power tubes here, as you can see, this portion of the ink is quite faded, which means it's running quite hot, and you can actually see that even the sticker over here is kind of turned brown, whereas the other side is all looks good. So these are JJs that I have in the amp right now, and as part of fixing this, I had ordered an octet of EHX EL34s. I am using this quad in this amp. I have 4 as spares, and the remaining 4 are in as spares. You can see that even the second tube, right around here is where it is quite faded out. I'm not sure if you can see it in the reflection, but you can be seen. And just removing the third one. This one looks good. It does not look faded as such, so I think I could use this in my plexi. Probably I'll have to test. And removing the fourth one now, and yeah, this too looks good. So it seems like 2 of them were running quite hot, and the volume drop was dramatic. I could really hear that it was down to probably 0.5 watts. That was the scale at which it went down. And what I've ordered is these Electro-Harmonix EL34 EHs, and it's a matched octet set, out of which I'm using 4 of them now and 4 as spares, as I mentioned before. So we'll have to see how this really goes in the long term, and I'm really looking forward to it, because so far every single time I have had to change tubes in any of my amps, I have almost always used JJs exclusively, and really liked the tone. It did, the JJs kind of make the amp sound quite a bit darker and thick, but I feel that this Electro-Harmonix quad set is going to make quite a difference. In fact, even John Sir mentioned in several of his videos, and also Dave Friedman, that they have kind of stopped using JJs in their current production amps, because there's been a big failure rate, is what they had said was the reason for it. So I'm going to go by their suggestion and see how much of a difference that it really makes overall. So yep, so the power tubes are in, and what I'm going to do now is hook up the amp to the power supply, and before that I will add a load to it, which is going to be using my Sir reactive load, and check the bias on this amp, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm just going to pause the video and be right back with all the tools needed. Alright, so I've hooked up everything. I have all the tools needed to kind of get the biasing done, and as you've seen that I changed all the power tubes as well, and I have had the amp on for about 10 minutes now, and not in standby but in on mode, right? So on this amp it's called stand back, and I'm going to be checking the bias voltages now. I've set my multimeter to millivolts. I hope you can see it clearly here, right? It's set to millivolts, and I'm going to check the bias of each tube one by one, and we'll see how it goes. And just to remind you, there is a load connected to this amp, which is my SIR reactive load that's acting as the load at this point in time. So the way to check it is, you know, there are two things that we need to remember. One is the bias pot over here, and this is the 1 ohm resistor. So although bias is calculated in milliamps, however, across a 1 ohm resistor, it is whatever you see on the multimeter in millivolts translates directly as milliamps, right? So this amp has been on for about 10 odd minutes, and I'm going to start checking the tubes and the bias. So here's the outermost one, and what I've done is, you know, this wire over here is the ground connected to the chassis. I think, let me just zoom out slightly. Okay, there we go. So that's this wire over here is connected to the ground, and the red terminal is what I'm probing with. Be very careful. The voltages are extremely high, and you need to be extremely careful. One hand behind your back and just be sure that you know what you're doing, right? If you do not know what you're doing, or have not worked with electronics before, or if you don't have the right equipment, please do not try this. And okay, so starting with the first tube, now you can see that it is at 32 millivolts, which translates to 32 milliamps, and the second one is 34, 33 and a half, 34. The third power tube is 37, and the fourth power tube is 34 and a half. So the way it works is that the outer two tubes act as one pair, and the inner two tubes act as another pair. So the difference is very important. Anywhere, you know, 0 to 5 millivolts difference is not a big deal at all, because you can never get a perfectly matched tube set ever. That's practically impossible. So I'm going to check the outer two tubes and see the difference. So it's 32.4 millivolts, and the other outer tube is 34. So it's well within, the difference is well within 2 millivolts between the outer two tubes. Let's look at the inner two tubes. So it's 36.9, 37, and the other inner tube is 34. That's again within 3 millivolts difference. So we are golden. There's no need to really worry about that. So what I would like to kind of do is, because there is one of the tubes, this tube, which is running slightly hotter. In fact, when I mean, what you have not seen is, as soon as I had actually initially powered up the amp, all of the tubes were showing about 56, 57 milliamps or millivolts, and that's fine, because, you know, initially it takes some load, and then it settles down. So over a period of time, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, you would realize that once the tubes have nicely warmed up is when you'll be able to get the actual correct readings. And that's what I did. It's very important to leave the amp on for at least 10 minutes, let it nicely warm up, let the tubes heat up, and then check. So yeah, so that's how it is. So technically or electrically, this amp is sorted. However, I would recommend that, you know, once you have done biasing of any of your amps, it's important that that you plug in and play for a while, and then check once again. If you hear any static sounds or any weak tones, then you might want to kind of increase the bias slightly, just to avoid any weak overtones or weak tonality. And I think this amp with a 450 volt plate voltage and EL34's 70% dissipation should be fine with about anywhere between 35 to 40 milliamps or millivolts. But I think it's important that important to understand that you should not exceed the 70% rating, because that additional 30% should be acting as, it's more like a headroom that, not a guitar tonality or amp related headroom, but electrical headroom that you should leave for your tubes, because that's the breathing space that they have. Should not be going way too high, because then it'll sound great, it'll sound very hot, the tubes will run very hot, but then it completely dramatically reduces the life of these tubes. So once again, going back and rechecking, I think it's been about 15 minutes now, so it's at 32, and the other one is at 34.5, so a difference of about 2.5-3 millivolts, which is perfect. And the inner tubes 37.5 and 35 approximately, 34.5, 35. So that's good as well. So I think what I would say is, then this is a done deal, it can be closed out. Thanks for watching, and I will be doing the same process on my JVM 410H, and that video will come up shortly as well. Thank you. Thanks for your time.